understanding file formats. If you use Photoshop or any Adobe program, you must know about file formats. So let's begin with raster versus vector. Raster is pixels. Vector is lines and curves. Pixels are little squares of color, and vectors are lines and shapes that are formed by algorithms. Pixels are resolution dependent, so raster images are determined by resolution, as in pixels per inch or PPI. The more pixels per inch, the sharper and more detailed the image. Vector is not resolution dependent. A vector image can be any size, from the smallest pinprick to a giant billboard. This is because they are built by computer algorithms. FYI, the vector does not support photos. Photos obviously are raster, so they're formed by pixels. On the left you can see it is vector, the lines are nice and clean, and on the right is pixels, you can see by the jagged edges. If this had a higher resolution, you wouldn't notice the jagged edges so much. The main raster file formats that we're going to concentrate on are JPEG, which is Joint Photographic Experts Group. I don't know who the heck named that, but that's ridiculous. PNG, which is Portable Network Graphic. GIF or GIF, which is Graphics Interchange Format. TIFF, which is Tagged Image Format. PSD, which is Photoshop Document. And RAW, which is Unprocessed Data File. That doesn't really have an acronym for that. Raster files are also called bitmaps. That's the old term. In fact, an older file called BMP was often used, and you may find some of those today, but it's very rare. The main vector files that we will concentrate on will be AI, Adobe Illustrator file, and no, that's not artificial intelligence. EPS, which is Encapsulated Postscript file. PDF, which is Portable Document file. And INDD, which is InDesign Document file. Just a heads up, all of these files will support photographs, but that doesn't mean they automatically turn into vector files. They still retain their pixel raster format. Pixels and resolution. In the print world, we use DPI, that's dots per inch. In the digital world, we use PPI, which is pixels per inch. This is almost interchangeable, but not quite. But for most of our purposes here, it would be interchangeable. Resolution is higher when there are more pixels or dots per inch. You can see here we have an image at 300 dpi on the left and one at 50 dpi on the right. And obviously the one on the right is more jagged. The next thing you have to be concerned about is lossy versus lossless. A raster file can be lossy, meaning that it loses clarity every time it's saved over and over. This means it reconfigures itself each time and then therefore loses data and clarity. JPEG and GIF files are lossy. A lossless raster file keeps its integrity with each saved version. Photoshop, TIFF, PNG, and PDF are lossless. The Photoshop document, as we said before, is lossless. It supports all the Photoshop functions. It makes an excellent master file to hold all your adjustments. You can even make a base layer of the original in case you wish to return to it. I usually make a master file and I save all other formats off of this one file for each of the different uses. Then I retain the master file for future use. Photoshop cannot be used on the web. Web doesn't recognize it, and most people you would send it to, who, if they didn't have Photoshop, would not be able to open it. The JPEG is an old standby, and yeah, the Joint Photographic Expert Group, there's a bunch of guys that got together and decided that was a great name. Obviously, they weren't great at naming. The important thing about JPEG is it does not support transparency, so therefore, if you save something with a transparency, it's going to come out as a flattened image. It does support 24-bit color, and it can contain 16 million colors maximum. It's an industry standard for photography as it's easily shared. Most programs support it, so it works well if you're sending something around. It will work on the web, whereas Photoshop will not. The only problem is it's lossy, so if you make a JPEG, it's best not to mess with it anymore. So don't keep resaving it. The more times you resize and resave, it's just going to get muddier and muddier. TIFF or tagged image format. This is a standard in the print industry. It contains a lot of information for it. It will support a lot of the Photoshop functions, so it's almost interchangeable for that, yet it's recognized more, and it is likely somebody will be able to read that. This file is lossless. It does support transparency. It's an industry standard for printing. It does not work well on the web, nor is it easy to share. It is not compatible with many programs. It can be a really large file because it stores a lot of data, which is why the printer likes it. GIF file, graphics interchange format, it was invented specifically for the web. It is a lossy file, but it does support transparency and simple animation. Hence all those GIF files that you see flying around on all social media. GIF supports 24-bit color, but only 256 colors maximum. So it doesn't have the color depth or the clarity that you would have in JPEG. It's great for vector art graphics, but since it produces at a lower quality, it's not great for photographs. PNG and JPEG are better for that. PNG is newer on the scene. It's called Portable Graphics Network. This is also great for the web. It does support transparency, and it is lossless. PNG supports 48-bit color, over 4 billion colors. That'll keep you busy. It was designed to replace the GIF file. It is replacing JPEG as a web standard, and obviously it's excellent for the web. PDF, the portable document file. This is designed for sending documents digitally. The file is lossless, and it does support transparency. PDF color is dependent on the source, so if you started with a JPEG, it would be that quality. If you started with something else, it would be another quality. It does support some Illustrator functions. Some PDFs can be opened in Illustrator, and you can save an Illustrator file directly to PDF and then reopen it as an Illustrator file later on. If the PDF is a flattened or scanned image, you won't be able to edit it in Illustrator. EPS, Encapsulated Postscript. This file was designed to share graphics documents independent of the Adobe programs. It's mostly outdated but still in use within the print industry. Billboard or signage companies often prefer EPS files. EPS supports both vector and bitmap. It is not usable on the web. It is designed to hold a description of the object internally using PostScript page description language, which is helpful for the printer to discern what the file contained. Adobe Illustrator is a working file for Illustrator intended for illustration, graphics, logos, etc. It supports vector format. Bitmap or raster images may be brought into the Illustrator file. These images may be traced into vector art. It is not supported on the web. It can be converted to a PDF file and then re-brought in and used again as an Illustrator file. INDD or InDesign document. This is a working file for InDesign. It is used for creating publications, books, and posters. It supports vector format. It is excellent for formatting typography, hence newsletters, etc. Both raster and vector files may be placed in InDesign. An InDesign file is not supported on the web. Basically, when you use InDesign, you usually export a PDF file. IMDL, InDesign Markup Document. This file is generated when an InDesign document is created. This document can be opened in lower versions of InDesign or cross-platform from Mac to Windows. This file is handy if you don't have the same version as the person who did the original, so you would still be able to open it, or if you swap from Windows to Mac, or vice versa. This is also not supported on the web. File extensions. The extension exists at the end of your file name. It usually is .tif or .psd or .jpeg. This tells the computer what the file is and how to open it. It's not wise to change this. If you do, your computer's not going to recognize what it is. So best to leave it alone. If you do know what you're doing and someone has changed your extension on you and you know which one file it is and you want to put it back, then you can do that. Sometimes when you take things off the web, it will drop the extension, and if you know you're working with a JPEG, then you can rename it using .jpg. It's best not to mess with these if you can help it, but if you accidentally delete them, know you can add it back on as long as you know what the file is. And that's the major facts about file formats. Now you're ready to rock on with Photoshop or whatever Adobe program you want to play in.